If you're going to stay in this room, let's pay attention to this, please. Once again, I know things are kind of rough this morning, but we're going to try to work it out. Let's work together as a team. So we're going to get started on this presentation right now. Why don't we get either your recorders out, your iPads, your pencils and paper so we can start taking down information.
Do we have a worksheet we can follow along with?
No.
No, we do not have a worksheet. That's a good suggestion though. Very good. Excellent.
We'll wait.
As you all may or may not be aware, a couple of years ago I appeared out of nowhere and started the line, and at that time, because of my own inexperience and lack of understanding of the DAV, I got kind of a bug in me that we need to train our members on our organization. I felt that was important. I had been a chapter commander for 3 years, and then I became adjutant. The very first meeting, my new commander asked me if after I did the roll call, if we had a quorum. And I looked at him, and I'm wondering if this is a trick question, because I never heard that question asked because I had never asked it at any of my 3-year meetings. So I looked at him, I looked at the crowd, and I said, I guess so, there's a lot of people here. So I realized, well, that's not really an appropriate answer. I got to figure out what the hell the quorum is. Next month, he asked me, do you have the Purple Heart pins? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, the pin you give Purple Heart recipients when they come in our organization. I got to look up, I got to find out about it. Dick, are you familiar with the Purple Heart pin?
One more recent.
So, all right, so anyways, I ran for office, and then I became a district commander right away, and I started going to chapters, and they were asking me questions like, well, how much money can we retain? I guess I got to find out. So I realized that, you know, I had to read the Book of Knowledge, which is the Constitution bylaws for the national chapter and the department. And then, so I felt that one of my first district meeting, I wanted to see how many people in my district knew as little as I did, so I put together a 21-question survey and passed it out. Well, what really was the remarkable thing about that is that it got the whole room buzzing and sitting together and talking and discussing these things. It wasn't that they got it right or they got it wrong, but it's like this was like brand new and they were buzzing and this was great stuff. So that's when I decided to, you know, get in the line. So I'm still big on training. I've had some difficulty trying to get the right kind of format set up. But what I really would have wanted here today is a round robin where you go here, here, and here, and you can see all the sessions. I hate to see people that have to not see something to be here because you're missing information. So we're going to continue to work on that kind of a format. Obviously, the fall conference is the greatest place to get training. But some people need training now. If you have a brand new treasurer, he needs training now because the infamous AFR is coming down the road. Now, at the end of the business session today, the second business session, the champions room will be available. If anybody here is a new officer, new treasurer, new adjutant, new commander, they've got questions, come in here, we'll talk. We'll get your name, number, we'll follow up with additional answers if we have to. We want to bridge the gap here until the fall conference. So what we're going to talk here about today primarily is other things that see, I'm a big believer too that when people go away to the national, or they go to the midwinter, or they go to the CNA, they should bring this information back. Because not everybody can go to these places. So that's kind of what this is about here today. Let's see if I can get this to work. Yeah, I can. Sure. Here we go. It's a good time to be a vet. I'm sure we'd all agree. I'm sure we've all got experiences, or most of us do, when we came back. Maybe it wasn't so good, but now is definitely a good time to be a veteran. Everywhere you go, people are saying thank you for your service. And I always tell them it's my pleasure. It was my pleasure to do that. But it's also a good time to be a veteran organization. Now, I'm not saying veteran service organization. I'm saying veteran organization because they're coming from out of the woodwork. And this is having an impact on the DAV and other veteran service organizations. For example, here's a partial list of the organizations that Donald Trump gave money to. Most of these people I never heard of. But if you got a word hero or a word warrior or a word veteran or a patriot in your organization, you're gathering some steam. Does anybody know how much did the DAV get from Donald Trump? Nothing? Nothing?
115,000.
We're up there. Charitable Service Trust. I kind of hid it in there, you see. If I put DAV in front of you, you'd know the answer. Is that Charitable Service Trust? Right there, Charitable Service Trust.
I see it now.
Yeah, it was a trick question. But we have to know, the neat thing about the money that we got our money early, we got it right away. We weren't one of these people at the tail end that they had to do all this vetting for. If you watch Donald Trump, he's on TV, we had to vet this guy, we had to vet that guy, they didn't get all the paperwork turned in. That's why it took me so long. Well, it didn't take so long because of us. So, he gave the Charitable Service Trust $115,000. Why did he give it to the Charitable Service Trust? It's what? Why didn't he give it to the DAV?
Nonprofit 5013.
What?
Nonprofit 5013.
5013, correct. And we just heard a little bit about that already. So the point I'm trying to make is that there are so many organizations out here now that claim to be veterans organizations, it's difficult for the individual to consumer to filter through it. They figure one organization is the same as the other. It's kind of like college football during bowl season. By the 38th bowl, I've had enough. I mean, really. Watching TV for 5 days, every hour, they've got analysis of a important bowl game? I don't think so. That's kind of the way it is right now with people in veterans organizations. If you're doing a forget-me-not drive, they'll give you $1, but they might not even know who you are, but they gave the guy and got a red one last week, so they're going to get the blue one this week. We see that all the time at Miller Park. Might not be the case in a small community, but at Miller Park we see it a lot. One person out of 2,000 will know the word DAV. And they'll come up and give us money because, yes, my dad or my granddad was in DAV or I am in DAV. Because there's just so many organizations out there. They treat all veterans organizations the same. Therefore, we're not basically any individual organization, although they do good work, they're not really relevant to the public. If they don't know who you are, you're not relevant to them. Now this became crystal clear to me last year at the National Convention. I had a unique opportunity to sit on the nominating committee. The nominating committee there is like the nominating committee here. Everybody running for office comes in and gives their pitch and you ask them questions. So I had a chance to sit and listen to everybody that was running for higher office. And one individual that I particularly liked and I thought was good, somebody asked the question, how long have you been in the DAV? And he says, I've been in the DAV 3 years. I didn't join the DAV until my state organization asked me to be the full-time adjutant. Before that, I never heard of the DAV. Now, this guy was a senior enlisted in the State National Guard, had been deployed 24 months to a combat zone, in a combat job, was drawing disability from the VA, and never heard of the DAV. Now, that just tells me that the general public is not necessarily aware of who we are. 3.9 million veterans are drawing VA compensation, and 1.3 belong to our organization. A lot of them haven't even heard of us. So we cannot assume that because we're here and we're in the DAV, that other people know who we are. And I'm really preaching to the choir here because you folks are in here, but I'm just telling you what the general public. So I'm trying to tie this together and what we can do to fix that. Basically, the national level, and when we go out to the midwinter and Al LaBelle keeps us informed, the national level is doing a terrific job on advertising and branding. They're all over the place. But it's up to the local people, you and I on the street, to really interpret that brand for people. Because we are the DAV in the local community. So we're the ones that make all that branding work. They could be spending millions of dollars up there, but if we're not doing the job down here locally, it's not going to be effective. So the most important thing we can do as DAV members is understand our organization so we can tell people about it. And if we can tell people about it effectively, then all kinds of good things happen. For example, when I came back from the midwinter, a lady in my wife's quilting group called up and said, I got a mail here from the DAV asking for money and I want to know if it's a good organization. So my wife puts her on the phone with me. And I talked to her, and I immediately talked to her that we're a service organization, but you know, one service project we do is transportation. I explained that to her. And she liked that, but she says, you know, I really want my money to go local. I says, well, I'll tell you what, I'm in West Dallas Chapter 19, and if you care to make a donation to our chapter, I'll guarantee you that 100% of that money is going to go to the transportation program, locally. She said, good. So she sent me a check for the chapter, and we sent it up, marked it for transportation. Now, that same week, a friend of mine has a birthday party for me. I was turning 69, I go over to his house. I sit down, he gives me a drink, and then he puts this pen in my face. He says, what's this, what's this? Well, it was a pen from the DAV. He had gotten mail from the DAV. Now it goes off in my head, because I was at the midwinter, Doug Wells was saying, hey, we're sending out 1.6 billion pieces of mail here in the next few days. So my friend says, I already sent my money in. Because both those people knew about the DAV and they knew the kind of work we're doing, and when they got contacted by National for funding or for money, they sent money in. So that's kind of how this whole thing works. National does a whole bunch of stuff for us, and we in turn, at the base level here, understand the DAV and tell people about the DAV, and all kinds of good things happen. Here's an example. A friend of mine, very first vacation to Arizona with his wife, he sends me a picture. I thought he'd send me a picture of the Grand Canyon, or maybe some beautiful mountains down in Tucson, or something. Even as him and his wife sitting around the pool, he sends me a picture of a building with a DAV sign on it. He must know I'm in the DAV. I got my golf partner. I went to Montana, hunting with him 3 times. I golfed with him for 8 years. He moved to Madison. First thing he does is send me a picture. This is a sign on Highway 51 and West Beltline in Madison. Nice DAV.org. But I mean, my friends are recognizing this kind of stuff and sending it to me, so they must know about the DAV. Here, this was in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I took this picture because it had there, you can't really see it too clear, but of course it's got Rotary, Lions, it's got Legion, it's got VFW. What we're missing there is DAV. So I've talked to a company in Green Bay that'll make little signs for us if we want. And it'd be nice if we could get every community in Wisconsin that has a little sign like this at the edge of town also showing a DAV emblem. And the only way to get that there is to talk to people And of course, talking to them, you tell them about the DAV. What's really happened in my chapter lately is totally the result of some volunteers that started helping us, got us involved with the Chamber of Commerce. Now the Chamber of Commerce can't stop helping us. Every time I go in and see them, they say, what can we be doing for you? What can we be doing for you? And what's happened is we've gotten all kinds of donations from the community. Recently, we just awarded a grant for $13,000 from the Community Improvement Foundation, all because the Chamber of Commerce started to understand what we do and is starting to spread the word. Okay, I was going to talk about Amazon because that's important, and we already know that a whole bunch of people shop on Amazon. I discovered this in January, but 0.5% of every purchase that you make, if you sign up on smile.com, would go toward, you could delegate it to go to Charitable Service Trust. Now, when I talked to Bridget in December, who runs the, pardon Dick, she administers it, Dick runs it, she administers it. She knows what's going on. She said that last year they took in $4,000, not 14. But she said that was a 300% increase. And I agree with Matt Bills. Just imagine what would happen if we told everybody about this. Now, I've seen this in print, but it's like a lot of things, even when we're reading stuff, where there's so much out there, we just don't. So that's why we're taking the time now to tell everybody about this. If you're shopping on Amazon, go out and register on, they call it Amazon Smile, but if you actually look at how you log in, it's right here, smile.amazon.com. And you set up your account, and basically your account will show up here, Charitable Service Trust. Now it's important to remember, talk to Dick about this, because we were talking about this, you have to, when you purchase then, go out to smile.amazon.com. You just can't go to Amazon.com for your purchases if you want this to work. But it's the same product, it's just a different window to get in.
Same pricing.
Same pricing. But they keep it separate. But then if you get the drop-down box, you'll see thousands of people there that you can. And Charitable Service Trust, DAV Charitable Service Trust, that's who you want to select if you want the DAV to get the money.
Martin didn't bring it up, John, but there's other DAV organizations listed
Correct.
there, but according to National, the only one that is authorized is the DAV Charitable Service Trust.
Now, they're working, the National, to get those removed, because actually there are some agreements at the national level between the national organization and the departments on fundraising. And the departments get so much money every year from the national, kind of as our part for national fundraising. So we're not supposed to do national fundraising, like chapters aren't supposed to do it. You can't put it, you're not supposed to put a little button on your website that says, donate to me or whatever you call, because that can reach outside of your marketing area. We do know that there's other DAV, like departments and chapters and stuff that are on there. They're working, the National's working to get them off. It takes some time. But the Charitable Service Trust, if you want to use this program, that's what you want to select. All right, let's get to the midwinter. The very first presenter that we had at midwinter, the very first slide, this is what it is. This was Paul Varela. He was the Assistant National Legislative Director, and this was the President's proposed $1.15 trillion discretionary budget. And if we look at this, we're seeing that 54% of the President's proposed budget was military. And then if we look at the next biggest piece of the pie, right there, veterans benefits. 7% of the wheel, or the income, or the expense wheel, the pie chart, the piece of the pie, is veterans benefits. And I have to tell you that what's going on is, every one of these pieces is fighting to get more of the pie. And who are they going to get it from? They're not going to get it from the military. So that's who they're looking at, veterans. This is going to be a continuing problem, not just in legislative, not just in hospital, in a lot of areas. Because everybody is out there, fighting for a bigger piece of the pie. Because the pie, it's tough to make the pie bigger, because it's so big already. So we have to really, this is the one thing that scared me out there, because this told me that this is a huge problem. It's not just the Koch brothers, there's a whole bunch of people out there that want to get a bigger piece of the pie for their own programs. So it's going to be an ongoing issue. Okay, now we want to talk a little bit about LVAP. Does anybody here know what this acronym stands for? Local Veterans Assistance Program. Does anybody know why that's in purple?
Started in Minnesota.
No. I made that slide the day Prince died. I was so taken by the event that I just had to show my feelings for it.
John, why didn't you do karaoke principal already?
Local Veterans Assistance Program. As you know, in the VA or in the DAV, as well as other veteran service organizations, we like to track everything we do because that's how we can understand if we're doing our job or not. We track our drivers, we track our hours in the hospital, but there's a whole bunch of hours that don't get tracked, and that's hours that chapter members put in, and then don't get recorded anyplace else. So they've set up this program called LVAP, Local Veterans Assistance Program, and there's 4 categories of volunteering. And as a chapter member, or a friend of the chapter, or a member of the DAVA, if you do volunteer work in any one of those categories, what we want to do is start to record that and put it in the system and have it go forward so it can be rolled into our number nationwide. Now the 4 categories are service work. So if you have a chapter service officer that's helping somebody, he should record those hours. A second category is fundraising, kind of self-explanatory, but if you're doing fundraising, record those hours. Outreach is any kind of hours where you're using to maybe talk to people about the DAV or our programs. And then there's veterans assistance if you're mowing lawns, doing grocery shopping, helping a veteran with his house. 4 categories. This program's been around for a few years. Just to give you an idea, nationwide, I think the state of Virginia got the award last year at the National Convention. They did 187,000 hours of LVAP in Virginia. Is there anybody have a guess on what we did in Wisconsin last year?
0.
Close. It's so bad, I didn't want to, let's see, it was so bad I didn't want to put our hours up there. Now this is real simple. We have a program, is this dying on me?
Seems like it.
We have a program. Senior Vice or Junior Vice Lenny Shire will be talking specifically or getting specifics out on it. But basically what we have to do is sign people up for the program. And we've got a spreadsheet that you can use because they want certain pieces of information on people. They want their name, phone number. So they want certain pieces of information. So you get your people signed up. Then what I do in my chapter, when everybody signs in for the meeting, on the sign-up sheet, I've got 4 columns. Just put in the number of hours that you recorded or you did that month or since the last meeting. And then we put that into the system and we're off and running. It's not hard to do. If you are a computer literate chapter, you can have your own, there is a login and a password. You can't have your own, but you can use the department's login and password. You can be the reporter and enter your own people. Not hard to do. If you're not computer literate in your chapter, then you can fill out a form and you can send it forward to the department, and I think that we're going to be signing one ladies up there to take care of that. That hasn't been totally finalized yet. But LVAP is a program that we really need to be involved in, because all we're doing is taking credit for what we're already doing. Now, if you're doing volunteer work at the hospital, those hours are already being recorded. But anytime you're doing volunteer hours and those hours aren't being recorded by somebody else, they're hours that you can put into LVAP. Are there any questions on that? Yes.
It's just the state of Wisconsin hasn't really been recording the hours.
We've been doing it.
To the local level.
We've been doing it, but we're not recording it, right?
Yeah, right.
So we just need to start taking credit. That's all it is. It's a national program, and we stand out kind of like a sore thumb when we have like almost zero. I don't know if we're telling the world that we don't care, or we just don't get it, or we're just not doing it. You know, what are they going to assume? We know we're doing it. We're working as hard as anybody out there in terms of voluntary work. We just have to start taking credit for it. Let's talk a little bit about the DAV. Founded in 1920 as a nonpartisan, nonprofit veteran service organization. We're now classified as a 501c4. You're going to hear a lot of talk about 501c4, 501c3, 501c19. It's important that you know what we are. We're a 501c4. We are a nonprofit, so we don't pay taxes. People can donate money to us, and they can deduct it as a charitable contribution because we are a veterans organization. And at the local level, when people make a donation, you probably already send out an acknowledgement letter. But it's hard to get big money this way because the whole consciousness of corporation now is thought to, it revolves around 501c3s. And we're 4. The difference between a 3 and a 4 is a 4 can advocate in Congress and in the state legislature for their benefit for their members. A 501c4, another huge example of 501c4s are all these PACs, these super PACs that you see advertising on TV for political candidates. That's probably another reason why corporations don't like to give you a 501c4. They want to make sure their money is going, to a charitable function. So we are a 501c4 at the national level and at the department level and at the chapter level. However, there is a resolution before the body this year for us to create a 501c nonprofit foundation as a part of our 501c4 organization. By doing that, we'll be able to then go out and be very active in working with corporations around the state, because the state is our patch. We want to work our patch. Okay, 52 chapters in 1,300 local chapters, or 52 departments, 1,300 local chapters. I just want to make that important because one of the things that we talk about is benefits, and we talk about helping people with benefits. And we have, in 1,300 local chapters, we probably have another 2,000 service officers out there that are helping besides the full-time people we have employed. We're dedicated to a single purpose, empowering veterans to lead high-quality lives with respect and dignity. We have 5 nationwide service programs that we're involved with. Rides, I like to tell people about rides. And this is basically if you want to give a talk to your local Kiwanis, your local Rotary Club, your local Chamber of Commerce, any local organization. I was told, Clarence, I'm going to make this story, I hope you laugh. I was talking to Clarence a while back, and Clarence says, everybody in Waukesha County knows about the DAV. I've been here 70 years. They all know about it. Okay, so I said, okay, Clarence. My next door neighbor comes over and says, hey, can you give my Kiwanis Club a talk on the DAV? We never heard of you. I can do that.
He didn't want to know about the DAV.
So anyway, don't assume that anybody out there knows who we are. And if you have an opportunity, most organizations like Kiwanis, they like to have speakers come in and do a 15-minute little deal at their luncheon. And we've got a little PowerPoint here if you want to use it. They usually have a computer. You can whip through this thing and you can go through your story. And If you want to use this, fine, it's available, just give me a call. Basically, we've had this ride program since 1987. And we drove over 900,000 miles in 2014. Anybody know how many miles we drove last year? Anybody know how many miles we drove last year?
Over 900,000.
It's on the back of the book. Over 800,000. Our miles are down a little bit. Might be because we've opened up some more clinics, I'm not really sure. But that's one of the good pieces of information you can find in that book. So we drove over 900,000 miles in 2014. We transported over 39,000 veterans. And we did 70,000 volunteer hours. I'll tell you one thing, when you tell somebody that, their eyes light up because they don't hardly realize, they don't understand we're doing it. Then they say, oh yeah, I've seen the van, but I thought that was VA. I thought that was VA. I used to work for AT&T. I'd go home and tell my mom I worked for AT&T, and she'd go, Ameritech. I said, no, Mom, AT&T, Ameritech. We have an identity problem, right? Sometimes we have an identity problem. People see that as VA and not DAV. They're parked at a lot of VA facilities. Maybe that's where they get it. I don't really know. But then I got to tell them, no, we're not VA, we're DAV.
They're dyslexic.
Yeah, there's something there. Yeah. We talk about benefits. Oh, then I really tell them to top that off. I say, since 1987, when we started the program, nationwide, we've driven over 620 million miles. That's like driving to the sun and back 3.5 times. That's a lot of miles. And then I say, we bought the vehicles. Oh, you bought the vehicles? Yeah, we bought the vehicles. I only got 20 more minutes?
You got 10.
I'm working here. Okay, benefits. We talk about benefits. We got 5 full-time service officers in Milwaukee. They're scattered around the country. They use a mobile service van. 300,000 benefit claims we placed last year nationwide. Advocacy. I talked to people last week going to Washington, and then I give one example only. A couple years ago with the government shutdown, remember that? Well, everybody was receiving benefits from the VA. They were cut off. And the DAV went to work on that and went to Congress and got legislation and says, hey, wait a second, that's not right. And so now, veterans benefits, mandatory spending by the VA is prepaid a year in advance. So if the government doesn't sign the bill October 1st, we still get paid. That was DAV that did that. It was DAV, and everybody in Washington will tell you that. We're doing a lot of work with women's issues now. We published this book that now has been so popular it's almost out of print. You basically got to kill for it. But this basically outlined what our stance was on women's veterans issues, and we're taking this booklet and turning it into potential legislation to help our women veterans. DAV does that. They work hard out there. It's absolutely unbelievable what they do. If you get a chance to go to Midwinter, I would recommend you go. The nice thing about it, it's not that expensive. You get 4 guys in a car, make sure they can all drive.
Or 3.
Or 3. You get out there and you share a room, you spend a few days, and it's not that bad. I don't know, Clarence, what you spend, 500 maybe, or 200, I don't know. But it's not that bad. So I would recommend, if you can do that, to do it because of the experience of just seeing how we operate and what we do. And we talk about the National Volunteer Service Program, and there's all kinds of stuff involved in that. I'm not going to go into it, but if you're lucky enough, you can get your picture taken with Gary Sinise, and that's my chapter commander, Paul Ferguson. He took the spotlight from me that I did. We got a new program for employment. It's brand new, only a couple years old. I don't really know a lot about it. But when I'm talking to people, I normally concentrate on the first 3 items. Vehicles, driving. I concentrate on benefits, and I concentrate on advocacy. And I find that those three items, and I can relay them very quickly, are very effective in letting people know exactly what the DAV does. Then the local chapter, here's the thing. I tell these people, all those vehicles we bought, here's how we get it, $1 at a time. And they look at me like I'm nuts. But I'll have my bucket there. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Well, that's where this money's going. We're going to buy 12 to 14 vehicles usually every year. We got 38 vehicles in our state fleet. 38 vehicles in our fleet in the state. We bought them all. And we're going to buy them back when they got too many miles on them and replace them. When you start to tell people about your program, they say, wow, I didn't know you guys did this. Because I thought you were like everybody else. And we're not. We clearly are above and beyond everybody else. We just don't pat ourselves on the back enough. And that's what we're trying to do. We need to understand what we do, and then we need to be able to tell people what we do. And if we can do that, this whole thing works full circle. Because at National, they're working like crazy, putting out mailers now. The people in your neighborhood are getting mailers for money. And it's important that when they get a mailer, they say, oh yeah, John was telling me about this program. I should contribute to this organization. Because I know what they do. They're driving all those veterans. And what Mark was saying today, if this legislative thing goes through and they try to disband the VA, that's a hell of a program to get rid of. All those free rides that they've given since 1987, somebody's going to end up paying for that. So that hopefully today was to give a little input on the DAV that you should be aware of. I would recommend that every one of you get a copy of the annual report from the DAV. You can download this from the internet. You can read it. You can understand what we're telling people. You should download the annual report for the National Service Foundation. That's part of the DAV, and understand what they're doing. And you should download the Charitable Service Trust. This is what Dick Marbs is in charge of, and understand what it does. If you have a local organization that's asking you for money, and they're asking you for more than you think you can give them, but they've got a good program, then would you elevate those folks? Tell them to go to the Charitable Service Trust. I don't know, Dr. Lee, I don't know if you got any money yet, but I mean, Dr. Lee, who was here yesterday and got the trophy for Disabled Veteran of the Year, you know, I helped him out with some stuff, but then all of a sudden he's like, he needs $200,000. This is not what I do. You know, he's doing a lot there in Milwaukee at the spinal cord injury, and with these wheelchair lacrosse teams and wheelchair this, and he's got all these guys running around, getting in and out of the garden. You want to see something interesting, park in their parking lot, watch these guys come in there and wheel themselves. They drive in there, and then they somehow get their chair around there, they get themselves lowered into the chair, and they go in there for their therapy, and they come out, and they get themselves back in there, and he's got these guys really doing stuff. And I think his programs, his sports clinics and that kind of stuff have been very effective in that regard. But I said to Dr. Lee, you need to go to the Charitable Service Trust. This is where you can get that kind of money. If you got a good program, that's where you want to go. So not everybody has needs quite like that, but there's another organization in Milwaukee, Guitars for Vets. They started as a blocky. We initially gave them seed money. Then they went to the Charitable Service Trust. And then last year, the year before, they were at the National Convention, right? So that's how we don't always have to do everything for everybody, but maybe we can refer them to the right place, but you have to know about these things to be able to do it. One last thing, I want to tell you that if you ever get a chance to travel with Dick Marbs, he knows every little corner bar spot in the country. And he'll tell you, oh yeah, I was in Arkansas when I was National Commander. Yeah, there's this little place that's got this jazz music and they got the greatest beer. So anyways, we're out in Washington, we're in the House of Representatives, and Dick runs into somebody that he knows. And this person is the assistant parliamentarian. So Dick says, yeah, we got a couple minutes here, can you give us a quick tour? So the guy gives us a little quick tour. He takes us inside the House of Representatives and shows us how it all works. This is where the president stands. This is where the parliamentarian sits. This is how they vote. This is how they tells us all the stuff. And then he starts referring to this book, nice leather-bound book, his was, and starts referring to that. And once I started asking what was in that, I said, hey, can we buy a copy of that somewhere? He said, oh, I'll give you a copy. Okay. So he goes in the office and he says, well, we're all out of leather-bound, but I got paper. Okay. Anyway, what this is the rules of the House of Representatives. And they vote on this every session. So this is how they run and do their business. You know, this is how my chapter does business. Robert's Rules of Order. This is how they do business in the House of Representatives. Now, the neat thing about this book, when you open it up, this was originally written by Thomas Jefferson. And when you open it up, the big type is from Thomas Jefferson. Then they got all the changes through time. And then they got kind of an explanation of all those changes. So that's why this book is so neat, because you can actually see what was originally intended and what we're doing now. So he donated this, he autographed it for us, and I'll be giving it to the ladies to take to our DAV, to the office in Green Bay. So if you folks, I don't know if we have a checkout system, but it'll be up there if you ever get in there and you want to look at it. But I would encourage, if you have a chance, to go to the midwinter, to go to the National Convention. You can really get a first-hand view of what the DAV does, and then bring that back to your chapters and let them know. What we're doing in my chapter now is, in the good of the order, 10 minutes every meeting, we're talking about some aspect of the DAV. We're talking about the Charitable Service Trust, we're talking about the National Service Foundation, we're talking about the DAV and what we do, so that we're going to be better members and be able to talk to people. So, any questions? That's all I had. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Senior Vice Commander Polk. Good job. Matt, what time you got? Okay, we're going to be starting at 9:30. So if you just go to the bathroom, whatever you got to do, but please come back, because we got some very important stuff coming up.